my dad was here today, I'd like to ask him if he thought this was fair.
Well, that was an interesting case history. And there were some interesting statements made that I would like to review. Brad said,
I'd like to ask him if he thought this was fair.
Would any parent want to answer that question? And the feeling that I have is that he may have asked that question of his mother, Alma. It would be tough. And getting to Alma, remember her statement?
It's been a month now. The lawyers tell me that I have to make some decisions pretty soon. It's been such a hard month.
Here she is in the grieving process, probably seeing a doctor, emotionally upset, having to have meetings with all the advisors and her kids, and having to make one of the biggest decisions, maybe the biggest decision she's ever made in her life. What a time for her to have to make the kind of choices that affect the long-term well-being of those kids and the company. And back to Brad.
We have great opportunities to build, and our management team is fantastic. We're really going to miss Dad. But I think we all want to show him that we can take care of his baby.
Well, look what happened. It was only a year or two when he had to consider raising money to buy out one of his siblings. Not too long after, when he had to buy the second. And business conditions were getting tougher. So you all saw what happened. Eventually, the company was lost. And as Alma says, it produced very little for all the effort and time that Harold had put into it, and Brad over the last very few years. Well, a couple of things. It's dangerous to trade in the shares of your own company. It should be a buy-sell agreement. It should be funded so that you don't have to pull capital out of the company to solve those kinds of problems. Another thing, one of the great advantages of family companies is the fact that they have patient capital at work. Because generations tend to pass shares down to the next generation, they tend to preserve and build their working capital. And increased working capital is one of the great assets that helps them to become so successful. Assumptions are very dangerous. We can make major mistakes so easily. And one of the most difficult assumptions, one of the assumptions that causes the most problems, is an assumption that families have that the business owner, because he's so successful, has thought about estate planning and succession and has developed a plan that's in place. The fact is that everybody around him has no idea of what he's done, and they very seldom ever discuss it with him. They live with these assumptions. That leads us to talk about wills. About 50% of the people who pass away don't have a will. And the 50% that do make wills have, in the majority of cases, a simple will leaving their spouse as the beneficiary, or maybe have left their assets to their spouse in trust. That can be a real problem when there's an active business involved, as you could see in the Sturdy case. The other thing is, what does a will mean? In fact, the will is your only estate plan. And the will is the last message that any of you are ever going to give to your spouses, to your kids, to your business associates, to your employees, and to the community. It would really be interesting if we could get a meeting together of some of the Sturdy family and their advisors